Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BT's Fly Tying Friday. Tonight, we're targeting freshwater bonefish with a Carp Coachman tied by Jarett Coons. And we're going to tie a couple of our favorite Sparkle Pupa type flies, one of which is actually a carp fly. But anyway, and the tip this week. Well, we're going to let that be a surprise to you. Anyway, we're the BTs from Boise, Idaho. And tonight, let's take a quick look at the recipes that we'll be dealing with, just in case you want to tie along with us. That's the Carp Coachman recipe that Jarett will be tying. First off, it's a hook size 6 TMC 2457 thread, black, eyes 4mm bead chain, weight 25 thousandths lead, tail golden pheasant tippets, body rusty brown crawdad, hackle Hungarian partridge feather, and the head is the Arizona synthetic peacock. And we'll be tying sparkle pupas. Very little difference in the recipes between the two that we'll be doing. We're using a 2X long hook tonight, just because we happen to have that's what's laying here on the table. Thread's going to be tan or whatever color we want. The bubble is Antron yarn. Underbody is dubbing, one color or another. The legs will be a soft hackle collar. The head is dubbing, and it could have a brass bead if that's what we wanted to do. This is Jarett Coons from Bishop, California. He was born there. He's lucky he got to grow up with the Eastern Sierras as his backyard. He's the owner of Sierra Mountain Trout Guide Service, where he guides year-round for trout, bass, and carp on his home waters. He's on the design team at Solitude Fly Company and donates his free time each year to several fishing kids events. Join us in welcoming Jarett to BT's Fly Tying Friday.
I developed this fly for our carp here in the Eastern Sierra, which are pretty much wild. They self-sustain in the Owens River in any waters that are connected. And I'm here in Big Pine, and I'm lucky to have some flats right here in my backyard that I can go to all the time. And that's what this fly is for. This is a fly that goes down to the bottom. It's not too heavy. It'd be heavy for a trout fly, but it's kind of a medium carp fly. Rides hook up. So I'm going to be talking about, how we do that, how we get a hook to stand up. So you can use it on the bottom, and this fly is great for everything. I've caught trout with it, big trout, catfish on it. You can strip it, but its main niche is in the flats on the bottom, standing up, or being hopped along, and the drag and drop, typical to carp fishing. I'm going to do the original version. Basically, I kind of changed it to be a guide fly once that happened. I had to shorten it up a little bit, so I just shortened it a couple steps. So we'll do the original version first, and then I can just show you how to. I got one kind of ready to go. That's the guide fly to speed up the process, but it's the same kind of thing. And the hook has changed. I originally did it on a 3906B. That was the only hook back then that was kind of curved like that. And it's the same thing as kind of times change. I went to this hook here. It had a little more curve, which made it a little better for standing up. So it evolved, and then 2013 is when it went commercial in Solitude, and it's been commercially available at Solitude ever since. So yeah, cool fly, and we'll get going here. So I will start the thread base, and we're going to do the tail first, which I know sounds really weird. I'm going to just cock this down a little bit more. But the reason we do that is we're going to build what's called a lift kit, and that's going to help to flip the fly over. We're going to put the weight on the top of the shank, and that's where all our weight's going to go. We don't want any of the weight of this fly below that, and that's going to help to flip it over. So any material you can stack on top of the hook before you put the eyes on will help to lift those eyes up and get them farther away from the hook shank, which will give that more leverage, more power to flip that hook. so to speak. So you can flip a relatively big hook with just a little amount of weight. So I kind of tend to do everything. We're going to start with the tail. And I used to just tie it in pretty willy-nilly until I watched a good video by Gretchen that tells you how to tie these in really good and get the color really good on them. So we're going to try to do it real nice. And if you see on these feathers, the outsides, the barring goes away. This black barring kind of, you lose that out here on the outer edges. So we can like split this kind of right out here and get rid of those last few that don't have a lot of barring. We'll go ahead and just rip those off. And I'm pretty much limited on my supply of stuff. That's about it for my partridge feathers. So I've been getting 2 tails out of 1 feather. So that's what I'm going to shoot for here tonight. So I'm going to split this in half, and I'm going to take half of this for my. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to separate it like this. And I'm just going to rip those off. And you can kind of straighten them out before you put them on. And it's kind of cupped, so I'm going to try to cup it and roll it around the hook, and that'll help to kind of spread that color out, because you know that one side of that feather is bright and one side's kind of dull. So I'm just going to make a couple wraps, and then you can kind of like squish that around the shank and kind of roll it a little bit, try to get that color so it shows on the whole thing. And where I line this up, here's another thing that'll help you flip that hook. We call it cropping the tail. I'm going to bring the tail of this fly and tie it down just so it starts around this bend. And the farther you tie materials down the bend, the more power that'll give that to flip the hook as well. That's another technique to flipping these hooks to get them to stand up. We call it cropping the tail. So with a few wraps, you can make sure it's where you want it. And that second black bar, I'm going to end my thread right about that second black bar, and that's going to be my tail length. I kind of bring my thread right to that, just around the bend, right about where it's at. Just crop it a little bit. Kind of spread those around. Try to get that color real nice. I've been practicing that since I watched your video. And that's kind of what I like about this fly. I want to make a carp fly that kind of had the classic trout look. I wanted to keep it like a trout fly, like beautiful and pretty. I didn't want it like bubblegummy, like some of the carp flies can be, that bright, weird stuff for the Sierras kind of. So this material, I'm going to keep it on the top. And that's going to just give me a little bit of distance away from the hook shank before I put the eyes on. I'm making like a little pad. And that'll just lift those eyes a little bit farther away from the shank. Hook flipping power. So we're going to leave our thread about right there. We don't want to go too far forward with those eyes. For one, this eye is it's easy to get the eyes to slip forward if you're not careful. There's nothing to stop it. And we need a little room for the dubbing on the head. So right about there. And when we do this, to get these nice and tight, you don't want to put them on straight. We want them kind of diagonal, like that, when we first put them on. So I'm going to go diagonally this way with my wraps right now, with about 10 wraps. And just kind of keep them in place. And these are kind of goofy because you can center them. So they'll want to scoot to one side, so they can get kind of squirrely. Okay. So we're going to go the opposite way with the wraps. And as we do that, we're going to push these eyes into place as we go. And that's going to gradually tighten them. And once you get there, you can kind of watch them. Got to be careful, but you can almost see them moving when you do it without pushing it. They'll slowly each wrap pull themselves into place, but you want to help them out. So once they look good, now we're going to go this way, like a parachute post underneath the eyes, and that's going to cinch the wraps we just did down and make it even tighter. And your eyes will be a lot more secure. Just like that. The newer like the dumbbell eyes and stuff are a little easier. Okay, so lead wire. Another old school thing. I'm going to do it again on top of the shank. And that's going to add more weight to that side. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go right between the eyes just a little bit. I'm not going to butt right to the back of them. I'm just going to let it kind of kick up just a little bit and try to get, I'm trying to just cheat as much weight as I can on that side of the hook. And this will apply to any fly, streamers. And I'm going to secure this down really tight for about, oh, maybe just under 1/8 of an inch behind the eye. We're going to put like maybe 3 tight wraps right behind the eye. So when I start to wrap it, I don't want that to move. And this little piece that's between the eye there, we can X wrap that kind of anytime throughout this fly. And that'll just kind of double secure that. It'll give you a little bit more weight. And it helps add bulk. What I used to kind of have to do with this was it would take so much dubbing to fill that gap. And again, a guide fly tried to cut out every unnecessary step. So that little piece in there just takes up a little more space, a little bit less dubbing, a little bit faster. I just tried to knock off every second. Let's try to get the cradle into the equation here and see if I can't screw that up. All right. So I'm going to get about 3 wraps. 1, 2, 3. You guys are probably going to shriek when you see me cut this with my scissors, but I like these because you can cut everything fine with the tips and everything thick with the back. You're never going to cut anything fine back in here. So I feel like you can cut all your lead back here. And if I need to, I can just pull them apart, and I got a little sharpening stone. I can sharpen them right up. So no big whip for me to cut lead. I really like those. There's like a flea market here where a guy sells them $1 a piece. So it's kind of hard to pass up. So you have that little piece of lead there sometimes. And what I like to do with it is kind of bring it up and tuck it where the first piece was, between the eyes if I can, and then just crush all of this forward. I want all of that weight as close to these eyes as I can get it. I don't want any weight going back here. That's going to cause it to ride wrong. So we want to compress all that weight right up behind the eyes. And then that little piece usually ends up getting stuck right between the eye. Then you can cram all that weight right there. It's going to get it to drop like a bomb, just straight down. And that's about it. I don't go any farther than that. You could if I was going to add more weight or you need to change the weight on it, change the diameter of the lead. Don't go any farther back with it. And then too, right there, that's about done for a stage point. If you're going to stage tie a bunch of these, you could do them to that point and then glue them and then, you know, move on to where we're going to go now. So we're going to take this back and we're going to do the body now. The guide version, I now use a 5/32 dazzle eye, and that eliminates all of the lead, all that step, speeds it up. It ends up being the same weight. This is going to be about 0.6 grams, and this will end up being about the same. So that dazzle eye speeds the process up a lot. But like I said, back in the day, this was all new. So there was no commercial carp patterns, I don't think, that I knew of when I came up with this fly. It was everything in the book, like you said, everything out of the Whitlock's, oh God, what is it? The red squirrel nymph and the a posse bugger. That's the other one I used. We're gonna make a dubbing loop just to know I got it tight. And we'll go ahead and bring the thread right behind the lead. Bring that bobbin in again. So we're going to use rusty brown craw dub, but I'm pinching the bottom of the loop and spinning, you know, the dub tool, and then I'm going to let go and let it spin out real quick, and it's going to catch it all real good like that. And then you can just continue to spin until it tightens up to your liking. You really can't go wrong with that either, unless you go so tight you snap it. Pretty easy to tie. Hard to get in trouble. And it's pretty shaggy now, but if you wanted to go shaggier, you know, to your liking, I got a little piece of Velcro on a thing. You can just, you know, tap the thing before you go. Tap your noodle, your dub in there, and that'll shag it out a little bit more. I just got this rotary vise last year too. I never had one my entire life, so it's again new to me. I don't always use it. And when I get by the head here, you can always go back. Don't be afraid to go back. I had a little bit hanging over, so I'm gonna just pull that back and then make my last wraps, and that'll just kind of let me see that lead a little bit better. I just want to see that. We're gonna go right to the back of that lead there. Just go ahead and tie that off. And again, you can leave that little tip between the eyes, any bulk you want to add there to kind of help you out. You won't have to use as much dubbing. It's like a tight wad, huh? So those 3 little wraps of lead there are going to be your base to wrap your collar now. We're going to put the partridge feather on. So we're going to tie that in right here behind the eye. And I like to kind of cock that feather kind of the direction it's going to go. A lot of times you'll be working with a pretty fat part of the stem. It is pretty thick, and they can snap sometimes. My cape's getting pretty old, so keep that in mind. So what I would do to compensate for that is I would kind of X wrap through the eyes right here and catch that feather with another couple wraps. And again, that's going to add a little bit of that bulk there and just double secure that. And when I did that, that feather wouldn't fall out, it wouldn't break. And we add a little bit of bulk if you're going to tie them the old school way. And that gives it 3 tie down points, actually, that X and then the one around the collar. So that feather is nice and secure. You're going to be dragging it on the bottom, so you want to get that nice and secure. And again, we can
So you're wrapping that with the fibers pointing forwards.
Yeah, you know, then it's going to kind of
Work the
make
water.
a little scoop and flare outwards. And we're going to dub it back anyway. We're going to kind of comb it back. We can pull it all back. So we're going to put on the old Arizona synthetic peacock, but we're using the Mega. So we left room for all this dubbing, and we're going to figure 8 wrap between the eyes, and we're going to lock that collar down, and we're just going to twist it on there. Again, we're carp trash. We're not winning any beauty contests. The shaggy stuff's always wild. You always grab those fibers there, but get them back and get a couple of wraps going. And that'll help you get those going back. So this is just kind of how I did it back then. Again, I, trim the fat on this fly and make it a guide fly. And that's kind of what I had to do now. So, any little unnecessary steps or looks pretty good. And we're done. We'll whip finish it here. Got plenty of room up there. That's always nice. Yeah, you short yourself there. That's going to be a nightmare trying to finish that off. So you can always add more dubbing and make that go away. Oops, let me get that out of the shot. Sorry about that.
You ready? Okay, you want to go to the materials, I would assume.
Okay,
All
this fly, I've tied a lot of these. I tied them commercially for a while, and it's not always the easiest fly, but it is a great fly. And it's one of Gary LaFontaine's flies that he developed. So for the materials, what I'm using on this fly, of course, is the Antron for the bubble. And we've got this dubbing I will use for the body. It's kind of a tannish rust color. And then this one is a darker one that I'm going to use for the head. Tan thread and some hackle. Put this over here where I can get to it when I'm tying. And here's our hooks. This, I've already combed out the Antron. As you can see, the Antron, when you first get it, it has knots in it. And so, take your bodkin and just tease those knots out so that you can get the smooth look that you want. So I think that's everything on the materials.
Yeah, you ready to go to the destination fly?
Yeah, this is where we're going, is this guy. And the trick to him is a couple of things, and it's to try to get a distribution all the way around of the bubble. But it's not going to be even, and it's not really going to be pretty. That's just not the purpose of this fly. If you want, one of the things you can do too is to tease out some of these.
You're blocking yourself.
Is that better?
There you go. Yeah, that's good.
And then you can just kind of have a trailing shuck going by. And the Antron refracts light so that it will look really great in the water. So I think that's all I have to say about this fly. It's not going to be pretty. Don't try to make it pretty. I keep trying to make these pretty, and they're not pretty. They're not a pretty fly. Okay, I'm just going to start my wrap, leaving enough room for the hackle and then a nice dubbed head. And I'm going to keep pressure on my waist so that I can get my base wrap on pretty fast. It was interesting when Jarett was talking about guides and guide flies. And one of the things when you're tying commercially is you do try to think of ways to make things faster. And one of them is a fast base wrap. Now, as you can see, I haven't quite gone to the end of the shank. So I'm going to be tying this antron basically on the bare part of the hook. Just makes it easier to move it around. Got my material here in a clip, so we'll take this off. This is a single strand of the what is it, the Zelon or lure flash, I guess, the lure flash antron is what this is. So we're going to fold it over. And as you can see, I've got a crook in it, so I'll probably tie it in with that. Maybe I'll just cut that crook out. Okay, okay, now I'm going to get back here. Oh, you know what I discovered today too? I usually only have one strand of antron because I tie these generally in a much smaller. So today I was thinking, what if I did this? So this is what I'm going to do today. I'm going to tie this underneath and just make it a little easier to spread that around. Let's get down there. You're supposed to be underneath. All right, there we go.
You snagged your hook.
Pardon?
You snagged your hook. You're kind of got a bad thing there around
Oh, well, yeah. That might be my tailing shuck.
Oh, there you go.
Don't worry about this. This is not a pretty fly, remember?
Right.
Okay. All right, let's clip that off. I'm going to cut this in half. And then I'm going to take the bodkin. That's kind of that little bodkin you got there, dear. Just dress this around a little bit, play with it. Now, when I go back to where I have bare hook, I'm going to do a spin it a little bit. I don't know if you could see that. And then I kind of check to make sure it's all the way around. I think I've got a pretty good distribution of it around the hook. And that's the key. Now what we're going to do next, and I'm not going to worry about this stuff hanging around because I want antron sticking around this fly in places. It doesn't really have to be, it's kind of like Jarett was saying, it doesn't have to be neat and tidy necessarily. I'm going to use some dubbing wax. We're going to do some touch dubbing here. When I'm tying like a mayfly or a trout fly that I want a real slender body, I probably would work with this a little bit more. But on this fly, you really don't have to have a little tight noodle for the body. If it's a little fuzzy, Gary would like that. In fact, he would probably have not done as much to it as I did there. So we've got a little bugginess to this one. All right, now we're going to dress this forward. One of the things that happens with this fly at this point too is when you tie it down, it's really easy to put a twist into the antron. So you don't you want to be real careful not to mess up all your good work. Now I checked back here and I need to spread a little bit more here. There we go. It does sometimes want to clump together, even after you've brushed it out. There we go. That's looking better. It's not going to be totally even. There we go. That's pretty good. I like that. Now we just give it a little push. Very gently drop your bobbin. So go up and around loose and then drop your bobbin. And that way that keeps from messing up all that work you've gone to. And you've got a pretty good distribution. Just trim off the excess. Now I'm going to have to work this back a little bit. I've got just some regular hackle here. So what I'm going to do is kind of use the fuzzy end of it so it'd be softer, or like a softer. So I'm going to use the hackle where I've got a lot of webbing here.
It helps to have your magnifiers on, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. I don't know, I was tying that whole fly without seeing.
I do that all the time myself. I'm glad you reminded me. I'm grabbing mine right now.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just take a few wraps. I'm going to push that back. A little bit more there. Trim it. There again, we're gonna, I loosely did the noodle. I didn't make it real tight. And we'll take another wrap.
To the materials for a moment. And again, I'm using the same thing that Gretchen had, hooks, body wool. I'm going to use a couple of feathers. I was going to use pheasant. I didn't have any handy tonight, but I had a quail skin laying here. So I'm taking some of that partridge, quail. I'm not sure just which it is, but anyway, a couple of larger feathers on that. I'll just set them over there. And I've already done just exactly like Gretchen did. I combed my Antron wool out so that it doesn't have any knots in it, just in the interest of saving a little bit of time. I'll be using some green dubbing, even though the recipe calls for hare's ear, and I'll explain to you why here in just a moment, and black thread. And I'll show you why here in just a minute on that. And I want you to notice that it's got the green body, and also my bubble is substantially less dense, I guess you could call it. I used a single strand on this, and for the reason that we're going to talk about on the carp fly. Now the carp fly, you'd think, what are we talking about? This is a LaFontaine Sparkle Pupa. Well, yes, it is in fact, but a local fellow here who's very well known for his carp catching abilities in the Snake River south of Boise. His name is Dave Gorley. He's even done a few DVDs a few years back on how to catch carp on a fly in the Snake River. His number one fly is a Sparkle Pupa that's tied a little bit on the sparse side. Now, he can't tie him as good as Gretchen can. So he just kind of splatters the stuff around the hook, and it's the color of the body shows through pretty well. Now, the reason that I went with the green instead of the hare's ear that he likes is because I wanted you to see on camera what it looks like under the bubble itself. But were I taking this to the river, I would be using hare's ear. And then we'll talk about the head here in just a moment. Like Gretchen, I'm going to start at the front with some black thread, and I'm just going to move back maybe a third of the way back on that shank.
Yeah, I think I didn't move back far enough. I like the head on yours a little better.
I'm going to stop right there because Gretchen, in our tying team of Al and Gretchen, we often team tied things, but one of the things we did not team tie was the LaFontaine Sparkle Pupa. It's just there was no good break point for us to pass it from one to the other.
Besides,
So,
you didn't want to tie it.
I didn't want to tie the dang thing. You're right. Okay. I didn't want to tie it. So I never got really as good at making the bubble as she did. I mean, I could make the bubble, but she would just kind of squiggle her fingers and the bubble would jump out, and there it was. Well, I'm going to have to show you a cheater's way of getting a good bubble. So it's going to take a little longer, and we'll probably have to go into the weeds a little bit. But anyway, we'll start by taking a look at this combed out antron, just so you know what we've got here. Now, I am going to bring this down on my side of the hook. Move under. I don't want to do that. What I'm doing right now, and my thumb is going to be in the way, but what I'm doing is I'm moving back like that to push the thread slightly to the other side as I execute the maneuver. I'm going to
Under the thread.
Kind of under the thread so it catches it. You notice that even though I hold this, that it kind of sticks together. Well, I'm going to use that property to allow me to loosely spread this material all the way around the hook. And where it didn't spread all the way around the hook, that's why God gave me a thumbnail. And you can just rotate the vise and twist. And as I mess with the material, it gets further and further around the hook. I'll come to the other side and I'll push it the other way. And I want you to notice that it's starting to cover the complete hook. And I'm using a single strand. Now I'm going to pull down so that there's a little bit of the hook showing right up here. And what that does is it allows me to keep the material on both sides of the hook itself. And I want to wrap down into the bend of the hook just a little bit. And then as I reach that area, I want to pull straight back. What that does is gets the material positioned the way I want it. All right.
You're getting pretty good at that.
Well, it's I had to practice this afternoon, so I wouldn't be embarrassed with you by how good you are at it and how lousy I am. Anyway, so now I'm going to put on the body. And mine, as I already told you, my body is going to be this bright green dubbing, so you can see what we have under the bubble itself. And again, my bubble is going to be half the size of Gretchen's.
You know, speaking of the mulberry, I wonder what a mulberry colored body would do with that bubble over it.
What a great idea. Some really purplish, reddish kind of a color.
Yeah.
We got to try it.
We got to try that.
Yeah. Our favorite place to fish on the Snake River, if you want to look it up on Google Earth, is Celebration Park below the Swan Falls Dam. It's about 8-9 miles down below the dam, but Celebration Park. And there's a really great, probably 20-acre flat, if you will. And it just like fishing the flats, and it's between a foot to 2.5 foot deep as you just work your way. It's a side channel of the river that goes back into a bay. And you can see I'm just using the touch method to get my dubbing onto the thread. And now I'm going to twist in a clockwise direction and get ready to start wrapping this body. Notice that I'm wrapping from front to back. We're back on our same kick, crisscross wraps, folks. Oh, darn, and I'm running out just as I get to the back. And so what I'm going to do is come forward with that black thread, forming a rib.
You're so fancy.
Yeah, I know. I've got to show my wife up a little bit. She's so darn good at tying these humps over what I can do. Okay, I want you to notice that I just wrap forward into the bare area on the hook. That's because I'm going to pull all these fibers forward and tie them down. Gretchen can take those darn bubbles and just squiggle her fingers a little bit. And the next thing you know, she's got the darn thing in place just the way she wants it. I can't do that. I'm not, as I say, I haven't tied very many of these, but I want you to notice that I'm pulling all these straight, and I've got a little bit of a twist in them. So let me go like that so they're not quite so twisted. And then I'm going to just tie them down tight with about 3 snug but not real tight turns. Now what I'm going to do is take my thumbnail or fingernail and press at the back or wherever I have to reposition the fibers on the hook to get them where I want them to be. Okay, now here comes the way that I do it. It's called a hair packing tool. Or I can use a thumbnail, but I cut my fingernails earlier this week and I hardly have any fingernails to do anything at all. So I'm just going to push this back now to make my bubble. Now I'm also going to take my bodkin and help. You see, I've got a spot right here where it's a little bit too close together. Well, let me just kind of spread it apart a bit. And then if I put a little bit of pressure on that, and I'll take this one and move it slightly over to the side. And I think you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about is I'm opening up my bubble so that the body can be seen. And any place where there's too many fibers, see right there, there's a few too many fibers. I just moved them, got them just about the way I want. And I want even distribution between top and bottom. So I'll just pull those up just a tiny bit. And I've got a pretty good bubble going all the way around there. I'm just going to set that down for the moment, tie it off. And we're coming up pretty quick on the tip, and it's a surprise tip. We'll talk about that in just a minute, but for right now, I'm just going to cheat and put on one of these big old body hackles. Unlike Jarett, I'm just going to throw away the fluff. I so doggone many flies saving the fluff would just drive me crazy trying to keep it. Anyway, I'm just going to tie this in by the butt. The exact opposite of what most folks do. They usually fold the hackle and tie it in by the tip and all of that. And one of the things I like to do is pull that stem back and wrap it back the other direction, just a small amount. Keep that feather from pulling out. And I was asked the other day, what hackle pliers do I like the best? There's a lot of good ones out there, but I sure like these guys right here. They're big, they're clunky, they're ugly, and they hold hackle. And that's really all I care about. Now I'm going to pull this up straight. Wet my fingers a little bit. I dipped them in a glass of water. Yeah, right. And I'm just going to stroke this back just a little bit, because I want you to notice that I want really long fibers on this. I don't care if they're pheasant fibers or quail or partridge or whatever the heck, but I want them long. 2 turns and that's enough. All right, now I've got this little mustache brush, and that's what you want for combing out these hackles so that they look good. They especially don't want to spread out when they're so much longer than the hook. It's not the traditional length that you would want, but I'm not much given a darn. I'm going after carp, and I think it's the motion in the water that attracts them. Now we're coming up on the tip of the week. I'll just push all those back and then I'll fuzz them up just here in a little bit. And the tip of the week is you can get your dubbing from many, many places, including Port Macquarie, Australia. And we're going to make dubbing out of this piece of kangaroo. So I am just going to reach in with my scissors and cut a small little bundle out. And as you can see it there, just kind of hanging on. I'll just grab a hold of that. It's way more than I need, but we'll get by. And I'll set that dubbing down now for just a moment while I get my wax out. Quit hitting the camera, Al. We don't want to do that. Now, when you're doing what I call raw dubbing, in other words, you're just taking fur right straight off the hide, no matter where it comes from, is you pull it off in just little bitty clumps. When I say small, most people would call that small. I'm saying half of that would be small. And then you let the wax just hold it there for you. And now I'm down off camera and you can't see, but I'm just got that sticky waxy thread there, and a sticky thread. And we're just fuzzing up this dubbing, if you will, and putting it on the thread. Now we twist in the clockwise direction. And I typically would have a hare's ear head, but this was close enough. But it's going to be a roo head instead of a hare's ear head. And I think I'll get just a little bit more dubbing.
I like that.
I like this stuff too. The dubbing handles a little different than, well, and the first time I touched the stuff as dubbing was a little earlier today. And it's almost like muskrat belly fur, but not quite.
It looks like it's got a little more
It's
oomph to it
I
or
don't know
something.
what it is, but there's something a little bit different about it. But that's the kind of a head you get out of it. So I mean, I'm kind of liking it a bit. And anyway, that's thanks to Paul and Robin down there in Port Macquarie. I'll go ahead and wrap it. It sticks to me and doesn't want to let go. Let me. Maybe I should have sprayed myself down with Static Guard tonight. Okay, let's put a whip finish on. I'm going to move back to the back of the head area, and then each subsequent turn is closer to the hook eye as I get up to the hook eye itself.
I think you showed me up. I like your fly.
Well, I wasn't trying to show you up.
Oh, I don't know that, but I think it looks good. I like it.
Yeah, I like it too. I like the fact that the bubble is less dense. However, the bubble that Gretchen produced on hers is considered the standard bubble for a commercial fly. Let me hold it up here. You can see the difference. You can see, and yeah, it's fine, but I think in the water, the lighter bubble is going to show a little bit better. But I can guarantee you the longer hackle is what makes a difference for the carp. And again, look it up on Google Earth. You just go to the Snake River south of Boise, Celebration Park.